Hi class, and welcome to this week's lesson, Lesson 8. Before we jump into it, I did just want to follow up on something that I mentioned, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that I was trying out a new thing for time management where I would shoot like 2 to 3 of these videos a week, so that way, I'd have them kind of queued and ready to go. And I got to tell you, it's made a huge impact. So I apologize if you kind of see the same boring background and the same boring shirt a couple weeks in a row or a few weeks in a row. But it is having an impact on my workflow and ensuring that I get this announcement posted on time and just getting to be able to answer more of your other questions and emails and grading papers and things like that. So it's I just wanted to report it's going good. Hopefully you don't mind. This week we're going to continue our talk about financial management. Specifically in the life skills, we're going to be hitting on interest, which is interest, savings, debt, all that good stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis. I really like this section because it's going to dive a little more into the nitty gritty of how to, maybe how to calculate it, how to think about things like this. Maybe it's something you're already well versed in. Maybe it's something for the first time you're reading. Either way, as I read through the material, a lot of none of it's really new to me because I've taught this course and dealt with it even in real life. But I always find it very enlightening. It's good. It's one of those topics that I think it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. It's good to remind yourself. It's almost, I don't want to quite compare it like this, but it's almost like reading the Book of Mormon, where you've done it, and you probably know a lot of the stories and that, but it's always good to go back and reread it, and you learn something new and something else stands out to you. So I really enjoy this lesson, and I hope you will as well because of that. With that, you will be doing an application activity this week that focuses around your debt and your savings. Now, when you open the application activity module link or whatever, you'll see that there's like 3 files to download. There's a debt calculator, a savings calculator, and the worksheet that you'll turn in, which is more or less a questionnaire. When you turn it in, you only need to turn in the questionnaire. You don't have to share your debt files or your savings files with me. Those are for your own learning process and understanding. So if when you go to turn it in, you just turn in the one questionnaire, which are things like, did you do it? What did you learn? What's something you can change? Stuff like that. And so you're not really ever sharing kind of that personal information with me. Now, if you have questions about the file, or if you want me to look at your file, you can go ahead and submit that or just email it to me, and I'm happy to do so. And just remember that it's 100% confidential. I won't share it with anybody. I work it on my laptop. My wife won't even see it. It'll just be between you and I. So if you want to share that information, that's fine, but you don't have to. Okay, just answer the questionnaire and turn that in. That's all that I'll be grading. So that's what we have for our life skills. Moving over to our writing, this week we're going to be learning about how to avoid plagiarism, right? So basically, to avoid plagiarism is that you need to cite your sources appropriately. So we'll be learning what's called the ICE method, which is introduce, cite, and explain. You'll learn more about that in your lesson this week. But the reason why this is so important is because you don't ever want to take credit for somebody else's work. It's just, it's just not right. And you definitely don't want to just copy and paste things. Right? You want your work to be your own original work. Now, it doesn't mean you can't use ideas from other people. You just need to be able to cite them appropriately. Okay? And so that's what we're going to be focusing on this week. You think about citing a source, it would be like if you worked somewhere and you came up with this great idea on how to save money or how to save time or how to make something more efficient or maybe some great way to increase sales. I don't know, whatever it is, right? And your coworker said, kind of took credit for it, or they reiterated it, and then everybody gave them credit for it, right? You would kind of feel like, hey, wait a second, that was my idea. That wasn't their idea. And yet here they are taking the credit, right? It's the same thing with writing. It's a little different because you're never going to see that person. You don't work with that person, so maybe it's a little more tempting to steal their ideas because who's ever going to know? Well, it's just not the correct thing to do. You should cite people for their works. It makes you more credible, right? Because it's showing as a as a writer that you don't know all the answers to everything. If I read a paper and it's got all this information, all this detail, and there's not a single source on it, I'm kind of not going to believe them, because I'm going to be like, yeah, there's no way you actually did all that, right? And so it's, it's a good thing to make sure that we're citing appropriately in our papers. Another thing with plagiarism in general, just kind of as a heads up, in our day and age, there is a lot of software out there that will catch plagiarism. And, and including in this class, when you submit a paper, I can run it through this software that will tell me whether you plagiarized or not. And what it does is the software will actually go out and look at like classmates' essays or whatever, right? And just see, how much is alike, and, what is the percentage of like stuff, sentences, words, things like that. And you can kind of catch plagiarism like that. And, and it does happen. Unfortunately, it does happen, right? Somebody gets behind and asks a friend and says, hey, can you just send me your paper real quick so I can turn it in? I just didn't have time this week, right? How easy is that? Well, all of a sudden the software will flag, hey, student A and student B have the exact same paper, right? And you kind of have to question it. And I unfortunately have had that happen when I've taught this class previously, where that happened, and I had to reach out to the student. And I said, and it'll pull up both papers and show you exactly. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, this is identical to so-and-so's paper. What's going on? And it doesn't just pull from this class, it pulls from all classes, and it'll pull from across the web. It's pretty powerful stuff. Kind of a funny story to go with this. When I was back in grad school, one of the other grad students, he submitted his thesis, right? So his thesis, a thesis in grad school is a little more than what we've done in this, right? We've had our thesis statement. A thesis in grad school, this is your final paper. This is basically what determines whether you graduate or not. It's a big, long thing. You've been doing research for, 2 or 3 years, and now you've formulated all these ideas and whatnot, and you put it into your thesis, right? And you write this big 30, 40 page, 100 page, depending on what it is, thesis. So he submitted his. It was all good. He submitted it to the office. They have to kind of check it to make sure that it's not plagiarized. Well, they came back to him and said, hey, like 80% of your thesis is plagiarized. There's all this information out there on Wikipedia, like copied and pasted into your thesis, right? And he's like going, what the heck? No way. Like, I wrote this stuff. He was determined. Well, turned out, it's funny now, it wasn't at the time. He's like freaking out, and well, he wasn't freaking out, but the rest of us were like, dude, what the heck? And turns out he wrote the articles on Wikipedia. Yeah. Remember how last week I was telling you anybody can go on and kind of write stuff on Wikipedia? Well, he actually went on Wikipedia as a PhD. This guy was going for his PhD, and he actually wrote those articles. And so he had to prove that to the school, the office, saying, look, I didn't plagiarize. That's my writing on Wikipedia as well. And so, long story short, they ended up clearing it up. It was totally fine. He passed. He was able to prove that was him that was writing that on Wikipedia. He had to show him how he submitted it. He had to really prove to him, because they didn't believe him. They said, no, you plagiarized this entire thing. And so anyways, kind of a funny story. But the software's out there. The day and age that we live in, it's real easy to catch it. So be wary of that. Not wary, just be mindful of that. Like, don't try and cheat. That's all it comes down to. Cite your sources, don't cheat. All right, moving on. This week we're going to be continuing with our fractions. I know last week we got kind of introductory to them, did some addition and subtraction. We'll get even more into them, doing some multiplication, some division. Keep going with that. If you have questions, please let me know. And then last but not least, sorry this video has kind of gotten long, but we do if I could talk, please keep moving forward with tracking your expenses, okay? We'll be using that information next week, so it's coming up shortly. And but keep doing it this week. All right, that's all I got for you. Sorry this one kind of ran a little long, still under 10 minutes, but kind of long. All right, have a good week. See you next week.